On this episode of the Bottomless Pit podcast, I talk with Stephen Gabauer, co-founder of Underdogs United, a brand new business that aims to tackle global problems such as deforestation, pollution and poverty through sport. Now, this might not sound like the most obvious approach to dealing with such global problems, but don't forget that sport is also global. It can bring people together regardless of language barriers or differences in political and religious ideologies. Whether you're the owner of a huge sports corporation, or an athlete, or a sports fan, you can do a lot to help these global issues in a variety of different ways, which will be explained later. Stephen is a friend of mine who I studied with in Germany a few years ago, and since then he has gained first-hand experience of some of the strategies already in place to tackle some of these problems during time he spent in Eastern Africa, which he also talks about in the podcast. After you've listened to the episode, if you feel like you want to get involved, make a difference, or you just simply want some more information, then go ahead and check out their website at www.gounderdogs.org, or find them on social media. On Facebook, they are Facebook/GoUnderdogsUnited. On Instagram, they're at GoUnderdogs. And on Twitter, slightly different, they are at @go_underdogs. They are constantly sharing new information and stories from the people that have been helped by the work they're involved with, and it's really inspiring stuff, so do go check them out. Links to their website and social media pages can also be found in the podcast description as usual. This is a really great cause, guys, so thanks for taking the time to give this one a listen. We really appreciate it, and we hope you enjoy it. This is episode 31 of the Bottomless Pit podcast.
The Bottomless Pit. Find us on social media and everywhere you get podcasts.
So where did this idea come from of using sports to make positive steps forward with regard to climate change and poverty?
Thinking all the way back to our master's program in Germany, because it was internationally focused and also focused on sports all over the world and different sports industries all over the world. That was my first exposure to how sports really does play a major role on people and even business all over the world. And so that was really interesting. As you know, we studied with people from Russia, Lithuania, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Hungary, Germany, USA, and we all had this common interest in pursuing sports as a personal interest and passion, but also from a professional standpoint. So I guess that was cool to think about building this global network through sports and maybe one day using it to make a bigger impact on the world. Then I went to Scotland and took a job with Golf Environment Organization. They focus on sustainability in the golf industry. And that's where I met my now business partner, Eric Dewey. Together, we were working on sustainability strategy for major golf events, for example, like the Open Championship in St. Andrews or European Tour or PGA Tour events. And we were focused on reducing the carbon footprint of that event and actually measuring it and finding new ways to engage the fans about sustainability or different green initiatives that were happening at the event, like recycling and other initiatives like that. And through that work, I became more familiar with the sustainable development goals and started thinking about sustainability, not just on a event scale, but on a global scale, and how really, especially with issues like climate change, it really is a global thing that we do need to collaborate on. So my business partner and I, Eric, got really interested in some of the global challenges that the world is facing from a sustainability standpoint. And one in particular really inspired me. It was the statistic that 3 billion people cook every single meal over an open fire. That was pretty astounding to me. And there's so many negative repercussions of that as well, as far as impact on health globally. It's the number one, or breathing in smoke from cooking with firewood is the number one killer of children under 5 globally. Also, wood is not a very efficient fuel source or environmentally friendly fuel source, and it contributes to 25% of global carbon emissions. And not only that, but the wood is typically coming from trees, so it contributes to deforestation. So we were really inspired, Eric and I, about using sports as a platform to, make a difference on some of these really big global challenges, because sports are the thing that really do bond us globally. So they might be the thing that could help us collaborate on global challenges. So that is how Underdogs United got formed.
I think that's really interesting, actually, that you mentioned, so the people, obviously that's an amazing statistic that I've definitely never heard of before, that almost half the world, essentially, is cooking over an open flame for every meal, but I'd never considered that therefore means, of course, they've got to get the wood for that. That's obviously then contributing to deforestation in a way. That's crazy.
Right, that's something that I wasn't very exposed to for most of my life. The idea that so many people were cooking over an open fire and learning a little bit more about the issues from an environmental and health standpoint. Though I was very inspired by the solution to this, I met some very brilliant people and their organizations that have been working for years and years and decades on introducing a scalable business model that actually addresses this and introduces a technology in the developing world, typically called a clean cook stove, that reduces smoke, it reduces carbon emissions, and of course then prevents deforestation. It also has a really great social impact and empowers women, typically in the communities, and also helps save money that was previously spent on fuel or time that was spent gathering firewood. So it has this really positive rippling effect in the community. And partnering up with some of the organizations we are working with Underdogs United, it's been really incredible to learn about all the nuances of this challenge and some of the solutions that are there. From a business standpoint, it was really interesting to think about such potential there with a business model that could potentially serve 3 billion people. One of our partners previously had a tagline that said, 3 billion people need it, we have it. So I thought that was really interesting as well, and a smart solution, because obviously charity is not enough for 3 billion people, but building a scalable business model, that seemed like more of a practical solution for the future. And that was something that we were really inspired to get involved with, an initiative, or bigger than an initiative, clean energy revolution, I guess you could call it, with Underdogs United, and get people excited about that through a very visible platform like sports.
Absolutely. Just one thing that that comes to mind, as far as when you think of charities or any organization or any person that goes to, an impoverished place to help with helping people become self-sufficient and helping them become healthier, or providing fresh water and all that sort of stuff, you don't usually associate it with sports. So why have you chosen to come from that sort of angle, and also then go into a little bit about why the name Underdogs United? What's that all about?
Right, good questions. First of all, sports, as you know, James, is sort of my professional background and passion. Also, it seems sports sit in such a unique area of society that they have a massive opportunity to leverage social change, social and environmental change. And sports have a special energy that's associated with the game that almost is inspirational, wants you to be, it integrates in that idea of changing yourself for the better. Being part of a team is another theme. Working together globally to solve some global challenges. Part of the idea is that everybody has some sort of underdog story where they, through sports or in their life, overcame what seemed to be impossible. A lot of people share that sentiment. And that's something with some of these global challenges that feel too big to address with one single solution. It takes a united effort around the world to be able to accomplish that. So there's something really inspirational and timeless and classic about that underdog narrative. If you think about Rocky running up the stairs, where it's even better whenever somebody who's not expected to win gets that opportunity. And that's what we were hoping with Underdogs United, is that we are not a charity where we're giving out something, although there's nothing wrong with that, but instead we're providing solutions and sort of a system that allows people to meet those basic needs in order to thrive. As much as possible, you want to enable the world, everybody in the world, to be able to meet that full potential and go beyond, that struggle to survive. And then, of course, United brings the whole world into it, and it has a little bit of that sports flair as well, in that, there's it has a natural sports sound to it. So that's how we arrived at the name Underdogs United. This was actually, the name Underdogs United was from a good friend of mine, Ian Ritchie, who's a brilliant brand strategist that we worked with. He did a really excellent exercise to arrive at the name, so I can't take credit for it. It was Ian Ritchie.
No, hey, but it's a good one. But let's talk a little bit more about the actual underdogs in question here. The ones that you've actually worked with or you've got experiences with. Who are they, and have you got any of their stories for examples, possibly?
Well, actually, yeah, that's a good question. In my time in Kenya and Uganda, I met so many inspirational people that it really energized me towards this concept even further. From afar, when I was in Scotland, it's exciting to imagine being involved in a community, in an African community for me, where that's something that I had never experienced before, even not from a culture standpoint, incredible, but also from the concept of just living such a different lifestyle on a day-to-day basis was intriguing to me, coming from spending most of my years in either the States or in Europe, to connect in with their way of life a little bit and really understand it was incredibly helpful for me to gain a passion and see things a little bit more clearly from Underdogs United standpoint. So really, it was a classic example of sports being such a powerful unifier. Whenever I arrived, I ended up watching some football games in a local neighborhood that was near my work. And actually, the kids at the field were getting really excited, and I'd play with them too. And then the captain of the adult team came over and said, "You're welcome to play with us anytime." It was a bit of a ripple effect where, again, it shows that sports are a universal language, because a lot of the guys, there was a language barrier with me. I was learning Swahili at the time, which I really love as a language, but I was, only basic proficiency in Swahili. But sports eliminate that, where I would have, cool moments connecting with people through the sports matches where we didn't have to speak at all. I know I experienced that in Germany too. You probably had the same, where sports are just a great way to integrate into the culture. And then
absolutely,
through that sports team, I got connected to a lot of, real communities that are facing some of these challenges that we're trying to address. And then I would get to see them from both sides, from a really intimate cultural side, where I was getting invited to their homes, cooking, eating with them. I even got an opportunity to go and gather firewood with two sisters of the goalkeeper that I was playing with, which was incredible. I actually walked a few miles with it carrying on my head. And
wow.
It was amazing. So this was probably one of the highlights of my time there. Was I went and did that with them to experience it, and it was so difficult. I mean, they are just so tough. They're there with a machete, gathering this firewood, carrying it on their head, sweating, getting cut up by twigs and everything else. And to literally walk a mile in their shoes was just fantastic. But it was really a highlight for me whenever I made it back to their village with them. And typically in Africa, gathering and carrying the firewood is traditionally a woman's job. And so, especially being a white guy and male, and I walked back into the village carrying it, the people were just going crazy. I mean, they were they were laughing and just cheering, jumping up and down. They thought it was just a true spectacle for them to see me walking back with the firewood on my head. So that was a moment I'll never forget. It's to see how excited. I mean, people's jaws were dropping, and the women were jumping up and down, cheering, and it was just a really funny moment. So that was cool from a actually experiencing and walking the walk of what we're talking about here with Underdogs United. That was a really special experience for me.
Yeah, amazing. That's fantastic. And I was looking on your website before we had this conversation, and so I noticed that Kenya and Uganda is mentioned on there in particular. You've also got Guatemala and Panama highlighted on there. You've got projects running there as well, is it? And what experiences have you personally had with those places that led you to picking on those, four countries in particular? I mean, you've just explained Kenya and Uganda, but for or for Central America as well, why have you chosen there first?
Well, actually, there's we have more projects that we can continue to add to that list. So one of our partners, the one that's based in Uganda, they're doing incredible work. They also have another renewable energy project in China, and we've had discussions with project developers in Cambodia and other areas of Africa, in South America. So it's really all over the world. I personally haven't had any experience with being in Panama or Guatemala, but the reason that we got connected with those project developers is we built a great relationship with them. I had met them at a conference that I attended and was really inspired by the work that they're doing. Another reason that we included specifically the Panama project is it's a reforestation project where we could imagine certain partners of ours or collaborators, clients might be specifically interested in reforestation as opposed to the clean cook stoves or clean drinking water projects. It's just about, at the moment, we want to be flexible to meet the interests and priorities of the people that we're working with. So you can imagine maybe an organization where trees or wood is at the core of their business, or maybe they're even, they have a supply chain, or some project partners in Panama themselves, they might be specifically interested in working with reforestation or specifically interested in working with Central American projects. So basically we want to offer a pretty diverse range of projects to make sure that we fit the needs and organizational priorities of our clients.
So two of the projects that you've or the collaborators almost that you've mentioned on your website anyway, the Paradigm Project and Impact Water. Am I right with that?
Yep, that's right.
Who can you give a little bit more information about who they are exactly and what you do with them? How you facilitate their work or how they facilitate your work. What is that partnership exactly?
They're called project developers. So essentially, they put in years and years of work into getting these types of projects off and running, meeting all of the assurance standards and certifications, and it's pretty difficult to get a project like this moving and have that highest level of quality certification that we're partnered with. They're called gold standard projects, but essentially those project developers, they put in that legwork to get that project rolling because it takes a lot of paperwork essentially. And so I'll start with Impact Carbon and Impact Water. They are one of the original cook stove project developers. So they came up with these improved cook stoves is what they're calling them. There's different names for them too, clean cook stoves or energy efficient cook stoves, where I was lucky enough to meet one of the designers. He was a really cool Ugandan guy. He showed me around his shop, and he's sort of responsible for always innovating and improving the design and engineering of the cook stove. But essentially what they do is these cook stoves are built with a ceramic liner that traps in the heat. So you can imagine with a open fire, so say if you're preparing a meal on an open fire, at least 95% of the energy that you're transferring is just going straight into the atmosphere rather than directly towards the food you're cooking. So they came up with this solution where it contains the fuel source, and there's various models that go up in sort of sustainability towards renewable energy, even solar options, but they also have it all the way back down towards firewood options too for people in the rural areas who only have access to firewood and no other fuel source. But at least if they're using firewood, it's designed in a way that uses probably like 75% less firewood per cook and reduces the smoke, and comes up and has a lot of other benefits too.
Yeah.
And beyond the design of the cook stove, they've done a great job in Uganda, at least where I was experiencing, and I can imagine in their other areas too. And it was a really special experience for me there too. I got to meet a lot of families that had previously done open fire cooking, and then they transitioned. I mean, they purchased a clean cook stove, and they ended up, firsthand telling me how it's affecting their lives, and they're an advocate for doing so, and not only environmentally and health-wise, but by using 70%, 75% less firewood on each cook, you can imagine you're saving 30 plus hours a week just gathering firewood. For the people that are purchasing fuel or firewood, they're saving, the cook stove pays itself back financially really quickly. Basically, Paradigm Project is doing similar work with cook stoves, and that's the project developer partnerships that we ended up with. So Underdogs United, at the current moment, we're not doing all of the on-the-ground operations because that would be too labor intensive. It would be a few years probably until we could consider building out our own project, which we might be interested in the future.
Okay, interesting, very good. So my next question is a big one, and feel free to break it down or answer it however you want to. But again, you're sort of aiming your product, if you like, at a wide range of people. So you've got sporting brands and organisations, at the very big level, which of course makes sense. But you do also mention individual athletes and even sports fans. And now for the purposes of this podcast, I feel that would be more relevant to talk about. So what exactly does that mean? And what can, an athlete or your average sports fan do with Underdogs United to help with your project? And what do they get out of it?
Fans can get involved by participating in our campaign. We are partnered up with a women's cooperative in Uganda, and they are producing very beautiful handcrafted, for example, oven mitts. There's these really unique hand-carved bottle openers, paintings on leather bookmarks, and all sorts of really unique gifts. And for each purchase that a fan makes, we will contribute 1 carbon credit on behalf of their favorite sports team. I have so many favorite items, but for example, the oven mitts I gave as a gift to my sister, and they have these beautiful African fabrics there, and she uses them in her kitchen actually as a piece of artwork. They're so colorful and beautiful, so they're a great way to give a gift maybe during the holiday season or whenever. And they also have a really incredible impact. Just 1 carbon credit has a big impact on our Clean Cook Stoves project. On average, what the impact that 1 carbon credit has is that it will help 1 person breathe cleaner air, save 3 trees from deforestation, and of course remove 1 ton of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So it's a really great gift to give, and it's kind of a cool feeling to know that you're impacting someone across the globe. So check it out. If you're a listener of the Bottomless Pit, we'd love to have you participate in the campaign. It's www.gounderdogs.org/fans.
Of course, absolutely. So what exactly are the carbon credits? What are they purchasing there exactly? What is that?
A carbon credit is a funding mechanism for these projects that benefit the communities in the project, and they also benefit the person that purchases the carbon credit. A lot of businesses nowadays, and even individual people, are committed to reducing their carbon footprint or even going carbon neutral or climate neutral. And the way that you can do that is purchasing carbon credits that are equivalent to your carbon footprint as an organization or as an individual, for example. The carbon credit itself signifies that 1 ton of carbon dioxide has been removed from the atmosphere or prevented from entering the atmosphere in the first place. And there's all sort of measurements and studies and data that's collected to ensure that is the impact. And beyond that impact of just carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, as I've mentioned before, it has a rippling positive effect in the community, empowering women and helping communities in impoverished regions save more money and redirect it towards critical needs like school and food and everything else to help raise a family. And one of the biggest impacts is reducing smoky air that causes a lot of respiratory problems. So carbon credits really are a way to contribute to the project and also be able to own that impact yourself. If you're the person that's contributing or the organization that contributes, it's a way to achieve carbon neutral. And you also asked about how athletes can get involved. They can become brand ambassadors and support our projects if that's something that resonates with them. As you know, athletes have such a unique influence on society, and many athletes are using that platform to really have a bigger purpose beyond their sport. So athletes can contact us directly, Stephen at underdogsunited.org, and we can get them involved in our projects if they'd like to come visit our project sites, for example, in Kenya, Uganda, or wherever. It can be really a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Amazing. I really think it sounds like you started something that I can imagine a lot of people would want to get involved in. Just before we wrap things up, is there anything else you would like to add for our listeners? And could you just quickly say where exactly it's possible to purchase carbon credits from? Because I can see that being something that will have really spiked the interests of many of them.
So we have carbon credits available for purchase on our website. We'd love to work with any sports organizations or businesses or any brands that are interested in partnering up to work with us on a sustainability initiative. We love the concept of having an impact home and away. And lastly, for any fans, you can come check out our website and all these really beautiful gifts that have a bigger impact on the world at www.gounderdogs.org/fans.
Alright guys, there you have it. That is Underdogs United. I'm sure you'll agree that they are really trying to do something amazing here, and they're already making great strides towards their goals. And as you just heard, it really doesn't take a lot to begin to take responsibility for your own carbon footprint. And you can do small things like turning off lights when you're not using them, all the way up to purchasing carbon credits to offset your entire carbon footprint while simultaneously helping people in need. What could be better? If this is something you're keen to get involved in, or something you're interested in getting more information on, then, as I mentioned in the intro to the podcast, go and check out their website, www.gounderdogs.org, or reach out to them on Facebook /GoUnderdogsUnited, Instagram @GoUnderdogs, and on Twitter @Go_Underdogs. Again, links and handles are all in the description. And it wouldn't be the Bottomless Pit podcast if we didn't also plug our own presence on the web as well. If you're enjoying the show, please consider subscribing to us. It really helps us get out there and grow our audience. And if you want to keep up to date with the latest information from us, then go and find the Bottomless Pit podcast on Facebook, or follow us on Twitter @TheBP Podcast. Also, if you want to contact the show, obviously you can do it through social media, but if you prefer to send us an email, you can do so by contacting us on bottomlesspitpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from you guys and are really enjoying having you follow what we're doing as we jump wildly from topic to topic. And on that note, we shall see you next time. Bye bye.